Well, welcome back, everyone, to our second second session in Hasty Hebrew. And hopefully you've all really succeeded through going through lesson 1 and reviewed the exercises, and you're very familiar with that first half of the Hebrew alphabet that we went over in that lesson. If you have not yet watched lesson 1, this lesson's not going to make much sense to you. So you need to go back to the first video, watch that one carefully, do the exercises. And again, you'll need one of the Hasty Hebrew workbooks, which you can purchase on Amazon just by going to the link below. So in this session, we begin on page 26. Also, before I begin, I did not take time to go through how to print each of the Hebrew letters. I'm not that good at it myself, but also below you will find a link to possibly 2 websites, to videos that will walk you through on how to print the Hebrew letters. And so I encourage you to watch those if you'd like to become more skilled in printing the Hebrew. Okay, page 26. As we did yesterday, I've taken letters from the alphabet, grouped them in such a way that letters that are similar are found together, so we will not get confused. So let's begin with the block at the top. Now remember the dot that we saw before, the P on the plate? And we talked about P's, and usually the dots we will refer to as P's as things we really don't want. If you're like me, I'm not a big fan of green peas. So anyways, here we have a backward C. This letter looks like a backward capital C. And we'll pretend this is a mouth, and there's a P there. And when you see this, you're going to say, cough out the P. So there's a mouth, and just like me, there's a P in your mouth, like, ugh, I don't want it. Cough out the P. So you see this picture. You say, cough out the P. Here, you see a mouth without the P. So you go, ugh. You've coughed it out. So you can imagine the P kind of going out, okay? So, cough out the P. Got it? Cough out the P. Now, what did your mother always tell you when you coughed? She would say, cover your mouth. So picture this as a mouth, and you're holding your hand up in front of it so that when you cough, you're covering your mouth. Cough out the P. Cover your mouth. And those are the words you say when I point to these. So make sure you get these pictures locked into your mind. So let's practice them. I'll point, but I won't say anything. Okay, very good. Let's just go straight down below. Here we see a picture that looks like a mountain with a base under it. And we'll pretend this is a man on a mountain. A man on a mountain. So when I point to this, you say man on a mountain. Cough out the P, cover your mouth. Man on a mountain. Okay, and you need to say these aloud. You can close the door so nobody thinks you're going crazy if they overhear you saying these sounds aloud and saying these words aloud. So we go from the man on the mountain to the next one. And this letter, interesting enough, in Hebrew lore always represents humility. Humility. And we will come back to that in a later lesson. But so I want you to picture a nun kneeling. So she's on her knees and her head is bent over, and say a nun kneeling. Man on a mountain, a nun kneeling. Cough out the P. Cover your mouth. Okay. Now let's move up here to the upper left-hand corner. Now, in printed Hebrew, this is the tallest letter in the alphabet. In fact, the way it's printed here in the font I use for this book, and in most of the fonts I found, they don't really make it as full size as you will see in other Hebrew printed books. Because in actuality, the bottom of this letter actually extends even lower than it does here, and even higher than it does here. It is by far the tallest letter in the alphabet, and it's found right about smack in the middle of the alphabet. It's like a lighthouse, and the rabbis say it stands in the middle as it looks down over the entire alphabet, keeping watch over it. So it looks like a lighthouse, but a lighthouse with a big lump in it. So we're going to call this picture a lumpy lighthouse, because it's so tall. It goes up above the line, it goes down below the line. Lumpy lighthouse. So let's practice our names of our pictures. Man on a mountain, none kneeling, lumpy lighthouse. Cough out the P. Cover your mouth. Okay, how are you doing? If you want more practice, you can always pause the recording and you can spend some time on this and practice them to where you feel very comfortable, and it doesn't take you long to name the pictures. Let's move on down the page, the lower right-hand corner. When you look at this, this is a letter that is unusual because it's sealed all the way around, and it's kind of shaped like a stomach. So if you look at an anatomically correct drawing of your internal organs, this is kind of shaped like a stomach with a duodenum here where the food comes in. So we're going to call this a sour stomach. A sour stomach. Maybe the guy ate too many peas. So sour stomach. Man on a mountain. None kneeling. Lumpy lighthouse. Cover your mouth. Cough out the P. All right. Now, interesting enough, this letter here is the letter Pe, which actually means mouth. It is the Hebrew word for mouth, and it pictures a mouth with an upper jaw and a lower jaw. And once again, we see a P in the mouth. Now, this letter is different from this letter. This looks like a backward C, and we say cough out the P, and cough begins with the letter C. So this is a backward C, cough out the P. But here in this letter, we're actually just going to say peas again, and then what you're going to do is you're going to go phooey on the P. You're going to spit that P straight on out of your mouth. Phooey on the P. Peas again, phooey. You just spit it out. Peas again, phooey. Cough out the P. Cover your mouth. Lumpy lighthouse. Man on a mountain. A nun kneeling. Sour stomach. Peas again. Phooey on the P's. Okay, now this one here should be very simple. It looks like the dangling door flap. Remember that from lesson 1? It looks just like the dangling door flap, except this one is rounded. So when you see this, you'll say a rounded door, rounded door. Sour stomach, peas again, phooey on the peas, rounded door. Man on a mountain, none kneeling. Cough out the pea. Cover your mouth. Lumpy lighthouse. Okay, I am assuming you're doing very good, so I'm just going to say well done. Now I've left this box for last because I'm going to warn you, and I don't want to give you a negative attitude, but these are the two most difficult letters to differentiate from one another. You can see they both look fairly similar. This one is made by a stroke that comes down at a sharp angle, then off to the left. Then you add the little apostrophe above it. But this one is made by a nice, slow, rounded stroke with a sharp line coming from the left. This has like an apostrophe coming from the right. This has a line angling down from the left. I'm going to move over to the other side, to the workbook pages here, so we can practice drawing these. That first one is, and I will start on the right-hand side. You draw like this. You come down at a sharp point and back, and then you just add the apostrophe. From left down to the right, then come back, add the apostrophe. And you might want to just pause the tape right now and practice doing this to where you're used to making this letter. But this other letter that's beside it that looks similar, we do a little differently. And the way I draw this, I make the little line coming down and then a stroke this way, coming down to the left, or down to the right, I'm sorry, down to the left. It kind of looks like a letter Y. Okay? So again, this one, sharp stroke down, make a sharp point, apostrophe. This one, you come down this way, and down this way. They are similar enough that you'll probably get confused. Don't feel badly if you do. Everybody does. But right now, we just want to introduce these and practice the sounds that they make and give them names. This one, if you look at it, use your imagination, it looks like the nose of an animal and the ears coming up. So you can picture the animal's nose like an eyeball here and the ears. So we're going to call this zebra ears, zebra ears. And this is kind of like a backwards Z that you're making, coming down and across and then an apostrophe. So zebra ears. When I point to this, you say zebra ears. So let's practice. Zebra ears. Cough out the P. Cover your mouth. Lumpy lighthouse. Man on a mountain. A nun kneeling. Zebra ears. Sour stomach. Peas again. Phooey on the peas. Rounded door. All right, very good. Now this letter to the left is like the very first letter we learned. It's a silent letter. It makes no sound. Excuse me. So once again, when you see this, you can think of a letter Y and say, why are you silent? Why are you silent? Because it is a silent letter. Or you can just take your finger, put it up in front of your lips again, And you can think of this line here as being a finger that goes across a person's mouth to silence. But there's nothing to be said when you look at this. But you can just think, why are you silent? Why aren't you saying anything? Because it's a silent letter. 2 silent letters in Hebrew. We learned one last lesson, and this is the second one here. So we have now learned the entire alphabet. And this time, as I point to the letters, or to the pictures, instead of saying the name of the picture, I just want you to make the consonantal sound that begins the name. So instead of cough out the P, you say ka. Instead of, well, here we did learn it, just that sound. Instead of cover your mouth, just a ka. Same sound as this. Both of these are identical in the sound. This is a k sound. This is also a k sound. You may wonder, well, why does Hebrew have 2 letters that make the same sound? Well, in English, we have a C, which is often pronounced as a K, and we have a K that's pronounced like a K. So we have letters that have the same sounds as well. So, k, k. L, like an L, lumpy lighthouse, la. Just like the letter M, n, like a letter N, none kneeling, z. And we learned a letter last time. Remember the zipper? This one is a little different, as we'll see. It's more of a teasy sound, a z, z, so like in Mozart or pizza. We don't have many words in English that use that TZ sound, z. But if you just pronounce it like a Z, you'll still be okay. But later you can refine it to make it a TZ sound, z. Silent. S. Remember our sushi fire? This is another letter that makes an S sound. It never makes an SH, just an S sound. This is like the letter P. P's again. This is an F sound. And you know, in English, we have the letter P, but when you have PH, it makes an F sound. So in English, we have something similar, where the letter P can be pronounced like this, and the letter P can actually be pronounced like an F, like in the word Pharaoh, which is PH. Rounded door, of course, is an R sound. So let's do them one more time. Ka. Ka, l, n, z, s, pa, f, That's hard to do consonants by themselves, isn't it? So let's turn the page when you are ready, and we're going to go ahead and practice as we did yesterday, and we're going to begin with the letter, cough out the P. It looks like a backward C with a dot in the middle. And of course, these are very easy to write, and you can practice here and on the right hand facing page. So we have ka, ko, ku, ki, k, ke, and for some reason there's a ke there a second time. I don't know why. Now the rest of these are English words. And so take some time to work your way through the rest of these. We'll take a pause. You can pause the video. And when you are ready, hit the play button and we will continue. Okay, let's see how you did. We'll pick it up right here. Cob, like corn on the cob, not cab. There's no ah sound. This is an ah sound, cob. Coat, cuckoo, coke, cot, cave, vacate, shock, code, cube, cod, like the fish, dock, cassette. And some of you who are young may not know what a cassette player it is, but that would be cassette. Okay, moving on to the next letter. This is the cough out the P. And you'll notice below I have no words, since there are few, if any, English words that use the sound. So we'll just practice this with our vowels. Cho, chu, cha, cha, chi, che, che, cho, because this letter, remember the clogged heater vent, has the same sound as this backward C. Cough out the P. Cho, cho, cha, 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 che, 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 hey, ke, che. All right? You may want to pause and go over those again. In fact, go from left to right and right to left till you feel very comfortable. You can identify the letter, its sound, and the vowel that is attached to it. Let's go on to the cover your mouth letter. So here we go with the vowels. Ko, ku, ka, ka, k, ki, ke, ke. And then the rest are Hebrew letters with the exception, no, I take that back. These are all English words, but you're going to have a little bit of a fudge factor with this one and with this one. So give it a try, and I'll explain what I mean, and hopefully you'll see what I mean on your own. So you can hit the pause button, and we'll come back in just a few minutes when you're ready. All right, let's give it a whirl. We're going to pick it up right here. We have Coke, just like we had up here above. Coke, cave, coat, cove, and I was trying to do book. It comes out like buke, but B-O-O-K is what I was shooting for. So again, I said there'd be a little bit of a fudge factor there. Coy and took, kind of like book. This comes out took, but again, a little bit of a fudge factor on that one. So give me a little room to wiggle there. Code, cube, cod, dock, cassette. You'll notice these are the same English words as we used above with the cough out the P letter, the backward C. But we're just using them now with the cover your mouth letter. Okay, let's move on to page 30. And we're going to go through the lumpy lighthouse. Let's practice it with our vowels. Lo, lu, la, li, le, le. And then you have English words. So we'll pause for a moment, take a time out, and when you are ready to continue, hit the play button. Okay, let's take a look at our English words. Lulu, lie, belly, ball, bugle, beagle. This is a bugle, this is a beagle. Call, coal. And hopefully you had no difficulty with those. Now remember, if you do get stuck, you can email me at the email address below at the bottom of your screen. It is hastyhebrew@gmail.com. Now, if you do have a question, please give me the page number and the line that you're working on, and then which word, like the second one from the end, or just, or give me some indication as to which word you need help with, and then I will email you back, and I'll give you the English word or give you an explanation the best I can of why it is pronounced the way it is. Let's move on down to our man on the mountain. And how about if I zoom in just a little bit? Hopefully that'll make that a little easier to see on your screen. Okay, so with our vowels, mo, mu, ma, me, me, meh. And then we have English words, 2 lines of them. So you can hit the pause button right now, and when you are ready, we'll resume. Okay, here we go. We'll pick it up right here. Mood, moo, tom, mall, male, mule, make, molt, mold. Now notice there's no vowel after the lumpy lighthouse. It's not molet or mullet, it's molt, molt, mold, mold. So that stop sign means there's no vowel attached to this. You go right into the next consonant. Doom, boom, move, move, because this vacant box and the vent with the bend are the same V sound. Move and move. Gloom, there's no vowel attached to the guy going west, so we go right to the next consonant. Gloom. Dolt and tomb. And now we go to the nun kneeling, the N sound. Let's do our vowels. No, nu, na, n, ni, ne, ne. And then I will let you continue on your own. All English words, except for this one. This is actually an alien word from another planet. If you figure it out, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you can't, I'll get back with you after you hit the play button. All right, let's see how we did. Moon, moan, not, navy, cane, main, tang, tang. There's an orange drink called tang. Now, did you figure out this one? If you remember Mork and Mindy, I think from the 80s, Mork was from the planet Ork, I believe, and he'd always say nanu nanu. It was a kind of greeting. So yeah, I had to throw that in. And we continue here. Noose, loan, mobile, mobile, soon, sing. Again, you have the stop signs. You go from the N sound right into the G sound. Sing. Goonie, Looney Tune. How many of you got that last one? Looney Tune. All right. Let's turn the page. And we'll continue with our sour stomach letter. Let's do our vowels, and then you can work on the words. So, su, sa, s, si, say, se. The rest are English words, and we will take a pause, and you can resume when you're ready. Okay, let's see how we did. Sushi. All right, there's our sushi letter with a dot on the right. Remember, when the dot's on the left, it's an S. On the right, it's an SH sound. So if our sour stomach with the oops, I fell down the stairs, su, she. And the yud could be there or not, it's still sushi. Soybean. Bossy. Baseball. Susie Q. That's a tricky one. Susie Q. Ghost. Soul. Dose. Close. Clues. Sake. Sailboat. Salt. All right. If you need to pause and go over those and figure them out and work them out, please take time to pause and do that. But we're going to keep moving on. Now here we have real Hebrew words. We have 4 lines of real Hebrew words. Some of these you may recognize. So we're going to pause right here. If you need to give your brain a coffee break, you can do that. And when you are ready, hit the play button and we'll go over these words. Okay, let's begin with line 1. Now some of these, after we go through all 4 lines, I'm going to come back and point out a few interesting words that you may recognize and just draw your attention to a few things. So, line 1, Sevel, Sicha, Achav, Sig, Selah, Salach, Nikah. Line 2, Neched, Nisa, Nisi, Negev. This is one of those words with accents on the first syllable instead of the second. It's not Negev, it's Negev. Nachol, Malay, Malach. Line 3, Makah, Michal, Mita, Mavet, Lot. And those, since we have 2 ah sounds, ah vowels in a row, you can say la'at, but normally if you're speaking at a normal speed, they're going to blend together to lot. Libi, Lamed. Line 4, Yesh, Yashav, Yeled. And this is another word where the accent comes on the first syllable. And this is one of the exceptions to the rules, but as you get familiar with Hebrew vocabulary, you'll know which words that you need to accent on the first syllable. It'll become second nature to you. Yeled, Yachid, Tameh, Chayil, and that's another one with the accent on the first letter, Chayil. Zahav, Levi, another one with the accent on the first syllable, Levi. Let's take a look at a few of these words. First of all, we have the word Selah. You find this word frequently in the Psalms. If you've ever read the Psalms, sometimes you read a verse. At the end of the verse, at the end of the sentence, there'll be the word Selah, S-E-L-A-H. That is what it looks like in Hebrew. No one quite knows what that word means. It can mean eternity, but in a psalm, it probably is some kind of instruction as to how to sing that line. Maybe it means you sing the verse 2 or 3 times, or you hold out the note. No one knows for sure. Lots of theories, but we don't know for a fact. And of course, this word Negev, when you heard me say it, you probably recognize that. That is the southern part of Israel down in Judea. That's the desert area, the Negev desert. Yashav means to sit. And in a rabbinic school or a Hebrew school is called a yeshiva. And it comes from this because the students come and yashav in the yeshiva. And that's where they learn. And tameh, you've read stories about how a leper would have to go about calling out, unclean, unclean. Well, that's the word unclean. Tameh means unclean. And chayil, one of my favorite words. The last chapter of Proverbs, Proverbs 30. The last 22 verses of that proverb are called the Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor. Chayil means valor. It's actually kind of a military term. And those last 22 verses are an acrostic. The first verse of the Eshet Chayil begins with the first letter of the alphabet, Aleph. The next line, the next verse, starts with the second letter, Beit, and right on through to the 22nd letter, Tav. So there are 22 verses that each begin with consecutive letters of the Hebrew alphabet. It's called the Eshet Chayil. Eshet is woman of, Chayil means valor. And this last one, Levi, you may know better as Levi, but it's actually Levi in Hebrew. So that's the name of the tribe of Levi there. So let's move on to our silent letter. Interesting enough, this letter is called ayin, and ayin is the Hebrew word for eye. And maybe that's one of the reasons it's a silent letter, because though eyes can speak, they speak silently. And this means ayin. This means eye. So let's practice it with our vowels. O, U, Ah, Ah. Of course, this is silent. E, A, Eh. So continue on, and these are all English words except for this one here. That is a Hebrew word. That is a place. So see if you can figure out what that place is. Hit the pause button, take a break, and when you're ready, hit play and we will resume. Okay, let's practice our words. Heavy. And remember, the ayin is silent and there's no vowel attached to it. It's like it's not even there. But in some words, it's part of the spelling. But this is an English word, heavy. Eagle. Eagle. There's no consonant, and the word eagle starts with a vowel. So here, when we spell out the English word with Hebrew letters, we start with a vowel. But we have to put the vowel under something, so we put it under a silent letter. Eagle. Ever. Anybody. Anybody. Yodel. Angry. Ain. There's a pause. There's a G sound, flows right into the R sound. Angry, angry. Late. Bone. Seed. Aden. Able. Aden. Aden is Eden. The Garden of Eden in Hebrew is Gan Eden, Gan Eden, and the Garden of Eden. That is how the word Eden is spelled. All right, we just have a couple more, and then we will be just a few more, 3 more, I think. So here we have our zebra ears, the TZ, as in Mozart. And I had to get very creative to come up with some words here that we could use this letter in, but you'll probably be best off just pronouncing them like a letter Z. So let's begin with our vowels. Zo, zu, za, za, z, z, ze, ze. And then we have English words. So take a moment to figure those out, and we will pause and return when you are ready. Okay. Here we have the word zeal, zone, Kotz, Ditzy, and Betsy, like the girl's name. I had to really struggle to find some words that use this TZ sound, and I know I missed on a few of them, but you understand how we have to fudge a few of these. Now here are some more real Hebrew words. So let's take a moment, pause again, and once you think you figured out how to pronounce those, we will come back. All right. The first word is Tzadik. Tzadik. Next, Omed. Oved. Eitz. Mishkan. Ohel. Esh. And Dam. These are all very interesting words, but a couple that I want to draw your attention to are these two right here. The first one, Mishkan. You've heard of the Shekinah glory of God. The Shekinah glory comes from the word Shekan, which is the last three letters. Shekan means to dwell. So a Mishkan is a dwelling place. And we usually translate this word Mishkan as tabernacle. So the Shekinah glory of God would dwell in the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Now the tabernacle had another name as well. It was called the tent of meeting, or the Ohel Moed. And there's the word Ohel, which means tent. Ohel Moed means the tent of appointment, or the tent of meeting. So we have two words for the tabernacle, the Mishkan, which is usually translated tabernacle, and Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting. Now let's move on to our letter Pei. Now what I've done here, I've mixed in both the letter with the dot, remember P's again, and fooey on the P. So when you see the dot, it's going to be a P sound. Without the dot, it'll be an F sound. So I've mixed them together. And we're not doing two separate exercises for the two ways this letter can be pronounced. So let's do our vowels first. Fo, po, fu, pu, fa, pa, f, pa, fi, pi, fe, pe, fa, pe. The rest are English words, so you can hit the pause button, and when you are ready to resume, press play. Here we go. We will pick it up right here. This is Popeye, the cartoon character. Popeye. Formal. Pizza. Fargo, like the city up in, is it Dakota? One of the Dakotas? Foolish. Shape. Pod. Plume. Party. Potty train. I had to stop, pause there for a second. The dash means the two words go together. So if you have little children, you know all about potty train. And this one, if you've ever watched, oh, my mind just blew blank. The Oompa Loompas, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This is Oompa Loompa. So if you got that one right, give yourself a pat on the back. And then our last letter. We're going to go to the rounded door. So let's do our vowels. Ro, ru, ra, ri, re, ra. And the rest are English words. So you can pause the recording and come back when you are ready. And here we go. Door, dork, ray, road, rose, redeem, braid. Now below we have real Hebrew names, just as they appear in the scriptures. So what I want you to do is, as you pronounce these are the Hebrew pronunciations, of course, and you may have to interpolate a little bit to figure out what the English name is. For example, the very first one here is Natan, Natan. And in the Bible, in our English translations, it's pronounced Nathan, but in Hebrew, Natan. So take a moment and pause the recording. Take your time, and when you're ready to resume, hit play. All right, here we go. Natan, or as we say, Nathan. Elohim, this is one of God's names. Actually, it means God. Adam, or Adam. Eden, or Eden. Satan, or Satan. Avraham, or Abraham. Now this name is the most special name in the entire book and in the entire Bible. And it is separated by dashes. This is the four-letter name of God. It's sometimes referred to as the Tetragrammaton. We do not know how this name is pronounced. Some people say Jehovah, but that is not correct. There is no J sound in Hebrew. This is a yud, the Y sound. And we don't know what vowels go with this name. So we have figured out that there are well over 1,000 ways this name can be pronounced. We don't know how it's pronounced. So when we come to this name in the Bible, when people are reading it, they will often say Lord. If you see in your Bible the word Lord in all capital letters, then you know that it's Yud He Vav He, the four letters of God's unpronounceable holy name. In synagogue, we may say Adonai, which is a Hebrew word for Lord. In common conversation, people may say Hashem. Hashem is Hebrew for the name. So when they say Hashem, they're referring to the name, the unpronounceable holy name of God. Sometimes in printed Hebrew, this name is so holy, they don't like to print the four letters, because what if something happens to that piece of paper on which these letters are printed, this name is printed? What if that piece of paper should be tossed aside, fall on the ground, get damaged? The Jewish people treat this name with such holiness that often when they are printing things out, they will shorten it and use an abbreviation, which is just two yuds, like two Y sound letters, yud yud. And when you see that, you know that this is God's holy name. I have separated the letters with dashes, and when I'm doing teachings, and I'm writing on a whiteboard or on an overhead, I will separate the letters with dashes, because I know that whiteboard will get erased. I know the overhead will get erased or thrown away. And so I separate it so it's no longer a name. It's just four separate letters. Some Jewish people go even further, and they'll change a letter or pronounce a letter differently just to avoid any desecration whatsoever of God's name. I have a prayer book here that I purchased in Israel, and I want you to see how they treat God's name. I'm going to zoom in. I think you may find this interesting. So, here we see God's name, Yud, He, Vav, and then they stretch this other He out. It's the same letter as this. So there are the 4 letters. But the vowels they put here are the vowels for the word Adonai. That's what's inside here. So they can see the letters of God's name, but what they will say is Adonai. Then for some strange reason, they have Yud, He, Vav, He, and in between the 4 letters, they take the 4 letters of Adonai, Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud. And they've shuffled those 4 in between the 4 letters of God's name. Once again, to show that when you say Adonai in this prayer, in this passage, you're referring to the 4-letter holy name of God. Very interesting convention they used in this prayer book. All right, let's zoom back out. I think that's about right there. Okay, I think we just finished the first line, so let's pick it up with the second line. Now there's a dash here, which means these 2 words are to be read together. And we have El Shaddai, El Shaddai, God the Almighty, or God the Sufficient One. Leah, Leah, who was Rachel's sister, one of Jacob's wives. Lavan, or in our Bibles it may be spelled out Laban. Rachel, or Rachel. Esav, or Esau. Dinah, or Dinah. Again, we have 2 words that make up a name, Beit El, or Bethel, house of God. Third line, Binyamin, or in our Bibles it would be spelled Benjamin. Yitzchak, Yitzchak, or Isaac, and his name means laughter, of course. Yisrael, or Israel. Yisrael. Moshe, or we would say Moses, but it's actually Moshe. Pharaoh, or Pharaoh. But sometimes in the Bible, his name is spelled with that dot there and pronounced Paro. Sometimes it's Pharaoh, sometimes it's Paro, but it always means Pharaoh. And he was the king of Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim, which is the Hebrew name for Egypt. Now we come to the weirdest, strangest letter in the alphabet. Now we learned this letter before, the letter Vav, the vent that is bent. But here's something new. Here's a news flash. This letter can be pronounced about 5 or 6 different ways. Let me explain. Most of the time, when you see this letter just by itself, without any dots above or below it, it's just going to be the V sound. Just a V sound. But if it has a dot above it, which means, oh, my head hurts. Remember the O sound? The letter can be pronounced vo or just O without the V sound at all. It can be vo or just O. And as you learn words, you will have to distinguish how it's pronounced. So as you go through a Hebrew grammar book and learn vocabulary, it should transliterate for you and let you know how that letter is to be treated. Most of the time, it's just going to be an O sound without the V. But sometimes you'll say vo, the V plus the O vowel above. And similarly, when the dot is in the middle. Most of the time, it's just going to be like the letter U, just an oo, and you won't say the vav at all, the V sound at all. This will be v, o, oo. But sometimes it'll be v, vo, voo. And the way you can remember these is here, the O is over, O is in the word over. Here it's under his head. So you can think of you as an under, but it's an oo sound. You can think of, oh, I have a halo. Ooh, I swallowed my halo, which is really dumb. But if it helps, that's all that matters. Now, here are some words below. I'm not going to take time to put a sign up here to tell you to pause. I'll just let you pause the recording if you wish. But I have 4 more words here, and I want you to try to pronounce them. And it uses some of these forms of the V letter. Okay, the first one. This is not Yavosef, it's Yosef or Joseph. Here the V is not pronounced, you just use the O above. So the vent with a bent with a dot above is just an O, not a vo, just an O. Yosef, Yosef or Joseph. This is Yaakov or Jacob. Yaakov is how you would pronounce it slowly, Yaakov. But when we say it, we usually say it so quickly, it just comes out Yaakov, Yaakov. Torah, Torah. These are the first 5 books of the Bible. The word Torah is often translated law in our English Bibles, and that is very unfortunate because the word Torah does not mean law. It means instruction. It comes from a Hebrew root, yara, which means to hit the bullseye, to hit the mark. And the Torah is instruction to help you hit the mark. And then this is the word Shaul, not Shavul. There's no V sound. You just say the U. And remember, most of the time when you see this letter with a dot above, you just say O. Most of the time when you see this letter with a dot inside, you just say U, not with the V sound. So this is Shaul, or we would say Saul, but in Hebrew, Shaul. This is my favorite part of the lesson, because now you've learned the Hebrew alphabet, you've learned the vowels, and now we can really start to read Hebrew, biblical Hebrew. And this is something that many of you will already know. Now you'll notice here the 3rd word and the 5th word are the yud yud. And that stands for what? That stands for God's holy name. So when you see that, I say Adonai. You can say Hashem if you wish. But we understand that when we see it printed yud yud, there is no word spelled yud yud. But what we are looking at is an abbreviation for God's holy 4-letter name, the Tetragrammaton. Now this is the Shema. So let's say it together. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. This means hear. Shema means to hear. It's also the word that means obey. There is no separate word in Hebrew for obey. So the word Shema here also means obey. So Shema, hear. And who is supposed to hear? Yisrael is supposed to hear. Shema Yisrael. Israel, listen. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai our God, Adonai Echad. Adonai is one. Echad is the word for one. When you read in Genesis, it says there was evening and there was morning, Yom Echad, day 1. And then we can sing this. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Okay? Now, this is another part of the prayer service, if you are familiar with the synagogue service. This is called the Ma Tovu. This comes from the book of Numbers. And these are actually words that Balaam spoke. He was hired to curse Israel, but when he opened his mouth to speak, blessings came out. And this is Ma Tovu Elohecha. Ohalecha. Ma Tovu Ohalecha. Remember, Ohel is a tent. How goodly. Tov is good. Ma Tovu, how good. Ohalecha, your tents. Whose tents? Yaakov, Jacob's. How good or how lovely are your ohalecha, your tents, O Jacob. Mishkenotecha, there's that word mishkan again. Tabernacle. Your dwelling places where you shakan. Mishkenotecha, Yisrael. Your dwelling places, O Israel. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. And this has a melody as well. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha el. Okay? So those are some actual verses from the scripture that you can practice reading. You folks are reading biblical Hebrew. Now below this are the first 5 verses of the book of Genesis. And though you may not understand many of the words, I would really like for you to practice this passage for our next lesson, because we'll go over it again in the next lesson in session 3. But let me explain a few things. First, here in boldface you have the word Bereshit. Bereshit is the first word of Genesis. And in the Torah, the names of the books of the Torah are not Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The names are Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Devarim. And they come from the first important or most unusual word in the book. Bereshit happens to be the very first word in Genesis, so the book of Genesis is called Bereshit. Bereshit means in the beginning. Now, right after this, you have an aleph and a colon, another aleph, a dash, and letter Hey. This tells you it's chapter 1. Aleph is the first verse of the Bible, so it equals the number 1. So it's Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 1, and the colon will break the chapter numbers from the verse numbers. Verses number 1 through number 5. Hey is the 5th letter of the alphabet, so it has a numerical value of 5. So we would say Genesis 1, 1 to 5, or Bereshit Aleph, Aleph to Hey. And down the right-hand side, these are the verse numbers. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, and Hey. Verses 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Something else you'll notice. At the end of a sentence, the Hebrew does not end with a period. It ends with a colon. This is standard practice in Hebrew. The end of a sentence is indicated by a colon. Here, and then verse 5 here. So I want you to practice just reading through this. It'll seem difficult at first, but the more you practice, the easier it gets. It will really train your eye to distinguish the letters and the vowels and to put the words in your mouth. Now, again, you may not be understanding everything you read, but some of the words you'll understand. So let's try it together. Bereshit, and let me pause for a moment. We haven't talked about accents. And the way I'm teaching you to pronounce words, I guarantee you will pronounce some of these words to a Jewish friend, and let's say you're pronouncing that wrong. But it's kind of like English. Here in Ohio, we say you all. But next week, I'm visiting friends in Georgia. They don't say you all, they say y'all. And words are pronounced completely differently. It sounds almost like a different language in some parts of the country where you go. So just as English has many different accents across the country, and when you go to England, they become very different. And then When you get up into to the West Coast, the city of where they speak Lilliputian, or what is it called? There is where the Beatles came from. Liverpool. I just popped in my mind. Liverpool. You can hardly understand the word they say, and I apologize if you're listening from Liverpool, England. But the English accent is so unique there. It sounds like a different language. So in Israel, they pronounce Hebrew more or less with the Ashkenazic pronunciation. And there they will say Bereshit or Bereshit. But in Eastern Europe and in New York City, they pronounce, in Israel, it's with a Sephardic, I think I said Ashkenazic. In Israel, it's the Sephardic pronunciation, Bereshit. But in Eastern Europe and in New York City, it's with the Ashkenazic accent. There they'll say Bereshis, Bereshis. Instead of saying Torah, which is Sephardic, they'll say Toira, which is Ashkenazic, with maybe a little New York, Brooklyn accent added in. So again, don't feel bad if people correct your pronunciations, but there are many pronunciations, and so we're not going to worry about it. Our main concern is to see what is on the printed page and understand what it means. That is my burden for this entire course. I want you to be able to see and read it. You can polish up your pronunciation later on if you find a tutor or a Hebrew speaker who can help you with that. So let's get back to verse 1. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. Verse 2. V'haaretz haito tohu v'vohu v'choshech al panei tahom v'ruach Elohim marachafet al panei hamayim. Verse 3. Vayomer Elohim yihi or vayhi or. Let me translate that for you. And he said, Elohim said, Yihi or, let there be or is light. Vayhi or, and there was light. Verse 4, Vayar Elohim et haor, ki tov, vayavdel Elohim bein haor uvein hachoshek. Verse 5, Vayikra Elohim laor yom, which is day, Valachoshek kara laila, which is evening or night. Vayhi erev, vayhi voker, yom echad, day 1. Now if you turn the page, you find the exact same passage again, but this time simply written in a more traditional Hebrew font. This is the kind of font that you find in most Hebrew Bibles and Hebrew prayer books, but I guarantee you the words are the same, everything else is the same. The font we've been using so far in this book is pretty plain Jane, straightforward, it's simple to write, and so I've used it for us to learn. But once again, when you look in a Hebrew Bible, this is the more traditional font you will see. So practice reading from this as well. And there's one warning. If you know someone who knows how to read Hebrew, do not show them these 2 pages, because they're going to say, well, that's wrong. There's an error there, and they are correct. And in lesson 3, we'll see what this small error is. It doesn't have anything to do with the spelling or with the words. It has to do with the way we're writing a few of the letters, and you'll learn all about that in session 3. So thank you for joining us. Once you feel very comfortable, you've mastered this material in session 2, then go right on to video 3, and I'll catch up with you there.